Once more we had eyes on us since we left the orphanage, as our followers made no effort to camouflage their pursuit. Yet Othric did not seem to notice, so lost in his own head he was. When I muttered to him that 2 pursuers were trailing us since a while, he reached out for his father's las pistol deep in his pocket. He stopped and turned to face the 2 trackers. He shot one dead while the other immediately took to running away as he saw the gunned pose of the pursued. Othric did not even contemplate to shoot the second, as he sheathed his pistol back in his pocket and resumed his hasty walk where he paused it. He surely has no remaining bandwidth to deal with further such complications. And how could I blame him? Passed on from a Varnell generation to the other, he once spoke vaguely about forefathers' tales from the time of the Plague Wars and relayed mystified stories about the slaying of rotten giants. Tales mystified indeed, to glorify the deeds of the Imperium, I always believed. But this, what we saw today, was beyond anyone could sanely digest. Such terror made me yearn for simpler times as a slave, counting daylong the worms harvested by Brug. How do I miss poor Brug? We could not give him a proper burial. Not that his body resurfaced after the plunge, nor did the slave children. What sort of black magic conjured by the Greenling was at work there remains another mystery. As I hastened my pace to match Othric's, I threw back a last look at the dead body of our pursuant. Amblers passing by seemed to give the body little to no attention. Death became but too common a sight in this underworld, sometimes welcomed even as dead man paste feeds the masses. Ironic for a most fertile agri-world, where abundant grain transits through the city as tithe to be consumed off-world. This irony is one of the many new norms in the post-Great Distribution reality of this planet, courtesy of the universalization of Harness Deep. Elevated to a new imperial hub, similar in nature to many throughout the Imperium, it quickly morphed from Thessera's capital port city to a hive city losing its soul. A soul for which different technocrats, merchants, clans and mobs vie for as supremacy over different districts is still shifting. This incendiary constellation is made only more volatile by the coming of a new religion. Before Ludmilla briefed us, we have never heard of the Yavanids. Yet they came to control much of the nether dwellings. They must have been outside of Othric's client list for us to be unaware of their presence and the magnitude of their growth. For every gang, league or cult that purchased or distributed worms were on Othric's books, either directly or further down the supply pyramid. As I accessed our records from my data slate in our way to the nether dwellings, I found no mention of their cult, nor those of gangs recently active in the nether dwellings. It is not uncommon that religious zealots shun stimulators such as worms. Yet this cult curiously sent after us 3 Arvus lighters, packed with thugs aware of Othric's worms, and emboldened enough to rob a feudal landlord in his own domain. The cult must be either powerful enough to warrant impunity for the act, or its religious tenets are mesmeric enough to send brainwashed zealots willingly to their own grave. Neither prospect was well omened. As I wanted to share such thoughts with Othric, we were about to step into the nether dwellings through the northern gate A15. Othric suddenly stopped at the sight of a small gathering at the fringe of the gate. A hooded figure atop a barrel, converted into a pedestal, was preaching his religion to the gattered flock. Othric pointed to the white cloth banner held by a seemingly apprentice of the hooded preacher. It displayed the same crescentic reptile I saw tattooed on the robber's arms back in the farm. When I confirmed the similarity to Othric, we headed towards the crowd. When we approached, the sermon spoke of the converging mind without defining what it really was. In mystical tones, the preacher went to describe the thoughts upon the veil of thoughts, revealed in ever-expanding commands and promises to their prophet Yanid, and through him to all of them in turn. The consciousness that is the converging mind also binds them with the upcoming liberators from beyond the stars. They shall come to deliver all of us after all the 5 prophecies of Yavin are fulfilled. For suffering on Thessera Prime has an end, the preacher reassured the congregation. and the liberation from the crushing boot of the Imperium is yet to come. Eyes in the crowd were suddenly lit with hope. A hope not really hard to kindle, judging by the apparent proportion of destitutes in the audience. Good old tricks of the Ministorum repackaged by this charlatan to prey on the weak and ignorant, whispered Othric. Works every single time, he added. I would have agreed with him yesterday, but my encounter with the Greenling made me question, what do I really believe? The preacher, however, noticed Othric's mutterings and suddenly pointed his finger in our direction. You, he shouted, you have burning questions to ask, lest you disturb this, our peace of Yavin. Embarrassed and not really used to speak to commoners that much, Othric stuttered before barking a question in panic. How can I meet this Yavin prophet? He asked haughtily. The question was met by mummed laughter from the preacher and vulgar mockery by the audience. Know your place, lowlife, shouted the zealous apprentice. The preacher pressed him for restraint, then addressed the crowd again. Let us not judge the ill-informed so rashly, he said in an appeasing tone before readdressing Othric. He asked him, what has Othric done that was so noble to earn such an honor? A man who suddenly was making a way through the crowd from behind shouted with an ironic grin. What he did? When he further approached, I finally recognized him as the surviving tracker from earlier. He then grabbed Othric by the collar and facing the preacher, he said, in a much grimmer tone this time, that the slaver killed a tribe fellow from the Northern Grace Coven. Seize them, disarm them, shouted the preacher. His soothing tone exchanged for furious howls. As we were fending blows and clenched fists from the now agitated crowd, Othric murmured in my direction, eyes wide open. Much of what he said was undecipherable, except from one glacially dreary prospect. He hoped that they will not find the flute, or else we were dead. I hope you enjoyed this passage from a secret archive tract on Nurgling demons, found in the warded vaults of the Grey Knights. If you did, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Support of this kind for smaller channels such as this one, as well as other creatives who enable genuine, fan-made storytelling, can go a long way in helping to produce further videos.